All right, let's you know what, we're gonna let our listeners in on a conversation like we have been having, and we decided to hit record right now, in the middle of the conversation, because we thought this is a conversation that I think we need to have on a regular basis, you and me. But also, I think, you know, generally, many people in their business world, in their life, they need to have these types of conversations, which is really around kind of, I guess the way that our conversation was shaping up, Kyle, was doubt.
Mm.
You know, in doubt that we're on the right path, or doubt that we're doing the right thing, or doubt around our current systems of financial gains and in compounding growth, or just in business, you know, like our systems. And we often have these conversations where we're like, oh, are we doing the right thing? And then
Mm.
and sometimes those emotions creep up, and it makes us go, uh, maybe we need to switch, or not, or quit, or like abandon everything, or
Yeah.
like start all from scratch. Like I think it's natural that we get these moments as human beings of self-doubt, or doubt in general, and then sometimes that throws a monkey wrench into the work that you've already done and the work that you're hoping to do. And so in this episode, we kind of want to just continue the conversation you and I were just having around, what do we do when
Mm.
we have those doubtful moments, and what does it mean about what the next step is?
Yeah. Yeah. No. And you and I have these conversations all the time, but also a lot of them are fairly open because a lot of them are really just podcast episodes, right? Like when we're sharing what we share out, a lot of times these are conversations that you and I have had, or they're conversations that we're having with clients, right? So
Mm-hmm.
folks reach
Mm-hmm.
out and, they are either our prospective clients or they are clients. And ultimately we're helping people through some of these most common challenges. And it's interesting because what we do as humans most often is we are seeking more knowledge, right? So like you're listening to this podcast probably not because you're like, I've got it all figured out, right? If you have it all figured out and you're like, I've arrived, they call it arrival syndrome, right? And
Right.
and Nelson Nash in his book Becoming Your Own Banker talks about arrival syndrome, and that's one of the key pieces of that book that I think is really important, is that you'll never arrive, like you'll never know it all, and therefore you're always going to want to be seeking more understanding and more knowledge. And as you do, there's two things that happen. First off, you're trying to help yourself make better decisions in the future. But with each new piece of information that you learn, it actually creates a little more doubt in your mind.
Sure.
And you think about that for a second, and you go, wait a second, like what are you talking about? And the reality is that as you learn something new, you actually start to recognize that, like, up until that moment, you did not know that thing. And therefore, all the decisions that you made up to that point were maybe ill-informed, in a way, like maybe not to a detriment, but you're literally making choices based on what you know to be true today. And you're like, well, what else is there? And every time you learn something, every time that you have this epiphany where you go, oh, I never thought of it that way, and it actually impacts your decision making moving forward, it actually creates more doubt that there must be more to know. And this is where investing in particular and growing your wealth and really trying to figure it all out gets really tricky, because a lot of people would say, hey, listen, ignorance is bliss. Somebody who
Right.
doesn't listen to this podcast and literally just hands over a good chunk of their money every week or every month, and they just hand it over to somebody to, even if it's charging high fees. We always say, like, literally it's better to hand money over to the big bank and let them do something with it than do nothing. That's really important. But here's the other aspect. As you learn more and oh shoot, there's high fees over there, like I don't want to do that. So what do you want to do then instead? Well, I want to do ETFs. So, and then you learn about, oh shoot, if I put it all in this ETF, then there's this, there's that, there's the next thing. There's all this complication. And what I think is really important for us to understand and for us to work towards, you can't just turn it on overnight, is that what you learn and what you know is helping you craft what is rational, and it helps you with rational decision-making ideas. But the problem is the emotion. And when you get that doubt, like that's an emotion, right? When you learn that you don't know everything, you start to doubt that everything you know today is complete enough to make the right choices. And this is why, John, I'll tell you, only one person that I've had a conversation with over these past, I would say 6 months or so, for example, is 100% equities with all of their investable capital. Only one person. Everybody else is not, even though rationally it would suggest that that would be a good idea over the next 20 years, not over the next 5, even not over the
Right.
next 10. We can't guarantee any of those things. We still can't guarantee 20.
Right.
But historically, this person is making a rational choice. Here's the challenge, though, is that for most of us, it's really difficult to just follow the rational choice without emotion creeping in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you said was spot on about when you have more learning. So let's think about the rational decision making that this person is doing by putting all of their money into the S&P 500 and going, look, statistics say that I am going to be fine in 20 years. So like I gotta stay true. But then the more learning you do, like this is what you were saying, the more learning you do, the more the more doubt creeps in, because now you're going, like, when you learn things you can't unlearn, and you start to go, what happens if I tinker with that? If I tinker with that, then in this way, I should get better returns. But then I'm like, okay, if I tinker with that, am I going to get better returns? And all of a sudden, it's like the doubt creeps in, and then going, well, maybe I should have stuck with that. Well, but then if I stick with that, I'm not going to get the better return. Like, what I think there's a few things here I think play into this. One is that, with more experience, doubt, in the motion, and the emotion that you experience is really, like, the motion you get is actually like your lack of experience shining through, right? Because when, let's say, if you had been investing in the market for already 20 years, then that experience of managing that portfolio tells you exactly, like, it tells your emotions to take a hike, because exactly, what's going to happen and how this works, and you feel confident because of your experience. Like, your confidence, your experience pushes the emotional part of you down to, like, be non-existent. It happens with everything, right? Like think about you and I when we first started, branching out from our teaching days, and being, public speakers, and traveling the world, and giving talks around, like, how to teach math this way, and becoming, educational consultants. Like, that sometimes was scary, right? Like, it was like, we don't know, like, what that looks like to go and speak to hundreds of educators and district leaders around a certain topic. But it's like, but your experience squashed all those worries away, because you knew exactly, like, you gained all that. So to go, like, hey, that situation comes up, I'm going to handle it. Like, that situation comes up, I'm going to handle it. And it's because you built a system, you've built experience to handle these certain scenarios. And when we think about our investing portfolios, that's what experience brings, is that when you have a system, when you have some rules that you're applying, like, if the rule is, every time I get a paycheck, I'm going to put this much in that portfolio, and then I'm going to set and forget, then that being your system, and if it was working for you, and you were saying, I'm going to stick to that for 20 years, then 20 years down the road, you don't have any emotional problems anymore. But it's like education and can help creep that in, but then you have to compare that with experience to help squash those emotions. So there's, like, that trade-off, like, what is the, how do I stick out like, how do I gain that experience,
Right,
so that I can squash the emotion? Like, do I have to wait 20 years to be able to, like, squash it? How do I deal with that emotion now?
yeah, and you bring up, it's an interesting analogy, because as I think about investment and investing, here's the other aspect, is that everyone is uniquely different, right? And we learn it in school when we're young. We're all different, and we're all unique, and we have all these qualities. But the reality is, like, we don't only, like, have unique appearances. How we think and how we feel and how emotions sort of drive what we do or don't drive what we do, these are all very, very individual. And in a lot of ways, even if, and I'm a fact finder, and we've talked about this a number of times, like, I love going down the rabbit hole. And part of why I love going down the rabbit hole is because I'm actually not a super trusting person when it comes to just following blind statistics. And like, think about this. I have a math degree. I used to teach high school mathematics. I was a a math consultant. And even with all of that and my understanding of probability, I used to play poker. We never talked about this, and I used to use, learned about all the different, probabilities. And the emotional side of playing poker made me go, I don't like this. And I stopped playing poker because I could not get over when I had such a high probability chance of winning a hand and some, guy at the other side of the table makes a silly move and it wipes me out of that hand or maybe wipes me out of that tournament. Like that really hurt me, even though probability said they still had a chance. And when they squeezed it out, it was like, man, my emotions like really, held me back from being successful there. When in reality, I knew rationally, if I just kept repping, I would win. Like I would win in the long run. So I think what I hope people are getting from this discussion here is that everybody is different and it's okay for you to decide and analyze who you are. And this is where people talk about risk tolerance, right? Like the more you know, the more your risk tolerance should on paper go up. But depending on who you are emotionally, that may not be equivalent across the board. So even though I know a lot about investment, I know a lot about, history of the S&P 500, for example. I know a lot about diversification. I don't have 100% of my investments, my investing dollars in equities or in ETFs. I have a very low percentage, actually. Why? Because I don't get emotionally triggered by real estate. I really don't. And part of that is because I can't actually see the ticker moving.
Well, I think also part of that is because you took that step a long time ago, right?
Oh, good aspect.
Like you took that step a long time ago to get experience on the real estate. So now it doesn't feel risky to you because you've learned, you've gained experience, you've risk tolerated along the way, and that your risk tolerance has gone way up for that asset class because of the learning you've done and the experience you've gained. So now it's like when something awry happens, you're like, hey, that's no big deal. I've gone through something like that before, and I know that it will come out again in the end, which means like if you want to build your risk tolerance, you want to squash your emotions, probably the best course of action for you is to take a step in the direction to gain experience. So if it's like, I've done all this learning around, investing in certain asset classes or ETFs or risk managing this or risk managing that or buying real estate or maybe I'm getting this pass-through structure set up so that I can do this. Like your probably best course of action is to take a step forward so that you can gain and start learning and gaining that experience so that your emotions get squashed down the road. Like it's one of the only ways I think that you push that emotion down is to have the system that works, but you only feel like the system works if you've worked it and you've learned and gained the experience you needed to make sure that you feel confident, which is like taking that step forward.
Yeah. And that's so bang on. And here's the other interesting piece is I get this question quite a bit, when people email in or we hop on calls and they say, what's the best option for me to blank or what's the optimal blank? And I'm like, that's an easy answer. Like there's always an answer to it. And, I had a call yesterday with a client and they were asking like, they were going to sell a property and they were like, should I take that money and pay off part of this primary mortgage and do the Smith maneuver, or should I take some money and put it back into my tax-free savings account? It's like, there's really easy ways for us to come out with like the number that tells you, this and that based on assumptions, which again isn't going to be, but here's the thing is like, there's so many other factors, right? So it's like, how is that going to affect you emotionally? How is, what is your goal? A lot of people align it to goals. And ultimately for this individual came down to cash flow. They were saying like, I'm in a cash flow crunch right now. And they were thinking of taking this money and putting it on the mortgage. I'm like, that's not going to solve your problem. That isn't going to solve that problem. It's not going to be your best move to do what I'm going to suggest to you because on paper can show you why all these other things line up. But it sounds like the cash flow crunch you're in is actually causing you stress, which is emotion. Even though I can rationally tell you this is what you should do over here, here's what I'm going to suggest based on where you are emotionally. And I think this comes into your actual plan and how you can move forward. So getting that experience is important, but then also being able to go like, here's who I am and here's what's going to make me feel comfortable. We talk about sleeping at night. Like what keeps you up at night is not rational. It's always emotional, right? Like if you're staying up at night, that's emotion right there. And I guess what I'm hoping you get out of this conversation here is that it's okay to not have the perfect wealth planning strategy that is rational. I think what you want to have is you want to have the most optimized wealth planning scenario for you emotionally, because that's going to be how you know that you're going to be able to follow through with it. You're going to be able to sleep at night and you're going to be able to reach the goals that you're after, regardless of what somebody else might be doing, because the rational move is to do X, Y, or Z.
Right. And then pair that, right? Like pair that. And this is the comfort part too, is to pair that with every step forward. You're going to gain that understanding. You're going to gain that knowledge. You're going to gain that experience to like change that, your core emotional response. So like what keeps you up at night now won't keep you up at night 10 years down the road, right? So like knowing that that's going to happen as long as you take the step, right? And get onto the pathways to start working towards your goals, then 10 years down the road, those things won't matter anymore to you. They will be less risky, just like your real estate is less risky to you now than it was a long time ago. It's like, as long as like, just you're saying like the biggest thing you want to take away today is it's okay that, you're not fully optimizing your pathway forward right now rationally, because you know those emotions in check, but know that those emotions will change with time and experience.
So I'm
So that,
picturing there's like a scale or like a
right, you're going to
spectrum,
scale
right?
up, right?
Where
Like
you,
you're going to scale up.
exactly. Which I think if we go all the way back to like, first principles and you think about this and it's like, why do people say start small? And it really has a lot to do with this as well. So, I think one thing here that I hope that the Canadian wealth seekers can sort of take with them is that whatever step in the process you're in now, as long as you're taking that next step, it doesn't have to be the leap, so to
Right.
speak, right? It's the taking
final
the
step.
next step. Exactly.
I think we all think it's the final step. We got to take the final step. I got to get the right move now, and then I'll never have to worry about it again. That's not how it works.
So a couple examples that come to mind right now is like things we don't want to do is like, hey, Kyle, listen, I want to start doing the Smith maneuver, which is the best ETF for me to do with the lowest fees. It's like, I don't care. Just get started. Like you can change that later. I want to get my first rental property, and I've got a few I'm considering, and they're all positive cash flow. It's like, you know what? If they're all positive, you're in a good place. You've done some, you know what? That one might be a little better than that one, but guess what? That one might have a roof cave in on you next week. You don't really know. So get started, do the process. Hey, Kyle, I was really thinking about using a leveraged insurance strategy. I have, $250,000 of retained earnings every single year, and I want to do that, and I want to do it today. Well, guess what? We could do that, but guess what? For vast majority of people, you should probably start a little smaller so that you get your feet well, you get comfortable with it. We can always scale that up later. So these are things that, as you're listening here today, it's like you're listening to this podcast to get better, but also start making yourself more experienced by starting today, starting smaller. And I'm telling you, as time passes, like John, look at like what episode is this that we're recording? I have no idea. 150 something, I think it is, that we're recording today. It's like, just get started. That's how we started this podcast. That's how we started our wealth building journey. And that's our message here to you is get started or take that next step, which is like getting started again in your journey today. And if there's anything we can do to help you out, of course, reach out to us over at CanadianWealthSecrets.com/discovery. On that page, we're going to ask you some questions, help you decide what phase you're in the wealth building journey so you can take that next step. And of course, if you're an incorporated business owner, you can reach out and you can opt into our free masterclass, which is at CanadianWealthSecrets.com/masterclass. We've had, John, I don't know what the count is. It's over 300 business owners that have been through this thing since we started it. And it just was released
in
at the
December.
end of December 2024. We're recording this in March, just a couple of months. And we've had hundreds of incorporated business owners through it. Lots of positivity around it. And of course, give us some feedback if you have any. We'd love to keep improving it and making it better for the next business owner that follows through.
Take care, Canadian Wealth Seekers.